Welcome to episode 53 of the Cycling Europe podcast. My name is Andrew Sykes, and welcome to the second part of this podcast series about cycling around Europe in the summer of 2022. It is Wednesday the 6th of July, about 8:30 in the morning, and I'm in Ostend in Belgium. In fact, I'm standing on the wide promenade in the centre of Ostend, just next to the casino to my left. Behind me I've got fairly high-rise buildings. Lots of people coming here for their holidays, no doubt. But in front of me I have a wide, pristine sandy beach, and then the sea, the English Channel. And I suppose somewhere in the distance is England, but I can't quite see it from here. Anyway, so far so good on the trip. Hopefully you've heard the first part of this podcast, or podcast series, which described how I got on from arriving in Rotterdam to, really the end of the Netherlands, or nearly the end of the Netherlands. Just to catch up with what's happened since then, I crossed the border into Belgium yesterday. Very nondescript border consisting of a cattle grid. It was a coastal ride. I'm following the EuroVelos 4 and 12, and my plan is to, basically keep on following the EuroVelo 4 all the way to Dieppe, at which point I'm going to turn left and head down the Avenue Verte to Paris. That's the plan, and hopefully that is what I'll be doing over the course of the next 3, 4, 5 days. I'm not sure exactly when I'll arrive in Paris. The weather's been fantastic. Even this morning it's actually quite nice and cool, but blue skies. Yesterday was particularly warm, but I like my mornings. The only downside with the morning is that when you're recording things like this, people decide to drive their tractor past you, collecting all the glass from last night's festivities. Yep, thank you. The first 3 days of the trip were fairly planned in terms of the accommodation. I spent the first night on a campsite, and then the second night with a Vrienden op de Fiets, friends of the bike person in the Netherlands. And then last night I was on an interesting co-housing project which I found via warm showers, and I enjoyed pizza and beer with the people who live there. That was a fascinating place to visit and really interesting people to chat to. Right, so without further ado, I'm going to head off along the coast, continuing my journey along the EuroVelo 4, EuroVelo 12 also, until I get to Calais. My destination for today is hopefully going to be Dunkirk. Camp hopefully in Dunkirk, and then tomorrow I think I'll get a train. This particular journey, I've said to myself, if I did the whole thing, it would be about 5,500 kilometres. I don't think I'm going to have the time to do 5,500 kilometres. So instead, I reckon if I take a maximum of 10 trains of a maximum of 100 kilometres each, that should make it a far more manageable trip and make sure that I do have a chance of getting back to Rotterdam for my ferry back home on the 3rd of September. Right. I'm not sure where I'll see you next, but I'm going to get on the bike and start pedalling. It's around midday on Wednesday, and within the next half an hour I think I'm going to be leaving Belgium. I've just got 1 or 2 knooppunts to do. Knooppunten, I think they are, plural. That is number 50 and perhaps number 79. I suppose it depends where I cross the border into France. Now the wind's picking up again. It was quite calm this morning when I set off, but it is blowing definitely from the north, and I'm kind of heading south-westish, so hopefully it will be helping rather than hindering me. I'm standing in front of a monument, quite an impressive monument to Leopold, the first king of the Belgians, it says. And, well, I think if old Leopold was here now, he wouldn't recognise much of the coastline. Very, very different to how I imagined it to be. I thought it would be very French and little quaint towns and perhaps a few villages dotted along the coast, with Belle Epoque houses. I suppose when you think about it, most of what was here must have been destroyed during the wars, both of them. And now it's a modern, built-up holiday resort for the people of Belgium. And I suppose when you've got such a limited coastline for a decent-sized population like Belgium, there's always going to be a incentive to build up and build flats and what have you. But it's very, very nice. Apart from that bit around Zeebrugge, which isn't particularly pleasant, the whole coastline is very, very nice and very well maintained and very tasteful, and there's lots going on. And they've managed to take note, every seaside town in Britain, they've managed to move the road away from the seaside. So basically, for much of the cycling, certainly this morning and to a certain extent yesterday, I was cycling on this wide boulevard in front of, or between, the apartment blocks and the sea. So, yeah, different to what I imagined, but very nice nevertheless. One thing I've struggled with is the language. I don't speak Dutch or Flemish, but I do speak French, and I'm so much looking forward to getting to France, to walking into a boulangerie or a campsite or wherever and just speaking French. And I haven't been to France. I think the last time I was there was 2016. So, yeah. It'll be interesting to see if things have changed. Oui, ça va bien, merci. Oui.
Avec le vent, ça va?
Ouais.
Pas trop difficile?
Ouais, avec le vent, c'est pas facile, mais j'espère que demain ça va changer de direction. Mais moi, je vais vers Boulogne et.
Oui, si vous suivez la côte?
Oui.
D'accord.
Alors peut-être parce que c'est plus vers le sud, n'est-ce pas? Ça tourne comme ça.
Destination, Étampes-le-Touquet, prochain arrêt, Marquise Rinxan.
It's Thursday the 7th of July and French time, nearly 2 p.m, English time 1 p.m. Why is that significant? Well, about half an hour ago, this will give you a time reference, Boris Johnson stood on the steps of Downing Street and effectively resigned. Excellent news. I was watching it from my bike as I had the phone out, live on the news. Now, this podcast is not about politics, but quite frankly, I have met quite a few people in the last few days, and I've asked them about what they think about Boris Johnson, Dutch people, Belgian people, and they all think he's a joke, and he is. Irrespective of your politics, whether you're Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem, whatever, the man was an embarrassment, and I, for one, am glad to see him go. I want a bit of, well, dare I say, boring politics. He was not a boring man, but I think sometimes we need boring politicians to get the job done. So really good news. Now, back to the cycling. As I said, it's Thursday, and this is my first full day in France. I'm actually cycling along the promenade at Le Touquet. Now, Le Touquet is a upmarket seaside resort. Well, it is before you get to the seafront. Some massive mansions, a bit reminiscent of the ones I saw when I was cycling along the coast of Belgium a couple of days ago. But they're all inland. When you get to the coast, it's a bit high rise. And whereas in Belgium they've removed the road, which makes for a fantastic wide promenade, well, this is a bit more like Britain, where they've got the road, yep, truck going past, they've actually got a cycle lane which is quite nice, and the promenade, and then looking out to sea. The weather, well, the weather's okay. Actually, I'm liking the weather today, because yesterday and the day before were bright sunshine, and it's just nice to have a nice cloudy day. It's not been raining. A few specks of rain this morning, but nothing more than that. Coming over the border from Belgium, easily signposted, a railway, disused railway track all the way to Dunkirk. Now, I arrived at Dunkirk very early, or rather a lot earlier than I thought I would. So instead of staying there overnight, I just continued. Unfortunately, the signage kind of disappeared after Dunkirk. Finally ended up in a little place called Oyer Plage. Not sure how you pronounce that, but that's where I finished. Camped there overnight, or in a campsite nearby. And today I caught my first train. Remember, the plan was, and the plan is, to catch a maximum of 10 trains over the course of the journey, and today was my first one, and it took me from Calais up to, or rather down to, Le Touquet, which is where I am right now. Now, I shouldn't really cycle and route find at the same time, because I've now reached the end of the promenade and I haven't got a clue whether I'm going in the right direction or not. Anyway, one last thing about the Boris Johnson business. There was a slight nice irony. As I was watching it on my phone in the outskirts of Le Touquet, what did I pass but the magnificent, beautiful, probably 4 or 5 star Le Westminster Hotel. Yesterday was indeed a memorable day. He's gone, yeah. You can read more of my thoughts about that particular topic at the website cyclingeurope.org. Just look up day 5 of this particular trip, and it is today day 6. And I'm keeping my voice down. God, the birds aren't keeping their voices down, but I'm keeping my voice down because it's quite early in the morning. It's only 8 o'clock, and people presumably all around me are still sleeping. I'd love to tell you exactly where I am, but I'm going to find that actually quite difficult, because I haven't really looked at a map yet, and I stumbled upon this campsite about 6:30 last night. I was cycling. I'd already tried one campsite, but they didn't take tents, and I thought, well, I'm just going to keep cycling, and I stumbled upon this place very, very suddenly, and it was a bit of a find, because although it's mainly static caravans, there's a great wooded, well, slightly wooded area in the centre, which is just perfect for pitching tents on. I'm the only person here, well, me and the birds, as you can hear, but yeah, fantastic place. So I had a good night last night. There was a pizza van, I had a pizza, a couple of beers, and celebrated the demise of you-know-who. Right, so today it is Friday, and well, my plan today is to cycle as far as Dieppe. Now, the route of the EuroVelo 4, the Vélo Maritime, is a bit twisty and turny. So, although Google Maps tells me, I think it was, when I checked last night, 74 kilometres, I reckon that's a lot more on the EuroVelo 4. I reckon probably 100, if not more kilometres. But I'd like to get to Dieppe today. And tonight, well, if there's a campsite that I can find brilliant, I'll stay there. If there isn't, or if there isn't one near the centre, I'll probably try and find a hotel to stay in overnight. I may even take a day off tomorrow, which would mean obviously 2 nights in the same place, because I've never been to Dieppe. I don't think I've been to Dieppe before, so it'd be nice to have a look around, and also give me a chance to think about the next bit of the Grand Tour, which is the bit to Paris. I reckon it'll take me 3 days, I think, along the Avenue Verte. That's the name of the cycle route from Dieppe down to Paris. It actually starts in London. So potentially, if today's Friday, then we're looking at an arrival in Paris on day of tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, perhaps at the end of Tuesday or Wednesday at the latest, which is kind of on track in terms of the timing. Anyway, the weather is fantastic this morning. There is blue sky everywhere. I've got to be careful, obviously it's going to be high temperatures, direct sun, so I've slapped on the factor 50. Make sure I'm plenty of water. I'll keep hydrating through the day. I think there's a heat wave on across Europe, because I did see yesterday on the news that there were weather warnings for a heat wave in Britain in the east and south of England, so that presumably extends to the continent as well. But it makes for good cycling conditions, and Dieppe, here I come.
Merci, bonne journée.
Bonjour. Je peux avoir un croissant et un pain au chocolat, s'il vous plaît. Et vous faites aussi du café?
Oui.
Merci.
Un expresso ou un long?
Un long.
Un long. Vous désirez du sucre ou pas?
Pardon?
Sucre, sugar?
Non, pas de sucre, pas de lait noir.
Noir, c'est ça?
Vous en voulez combien?
Une.
Une pêche blanche?
Et non, pour manger
À
tout de
manger
suite.
là aujourd'hui?
Oui, oui, absolument. Et aussi une banane, même chose pour manger aujourd'hui. Et aussi une pomme.
Ça, c'est ça.
Voilà. It's turning into a magical morning. I had breakfast in a little place called Le Crotoy, next to the Baie de Somme, Baie de la Somme. Beautiful little place, pristine, really beautiful buildings beside the shore, and there was even a market on, which made perfect opportunity to test my French, as you perhaps just heard. And the cycling, well, the EuroVelo 4 has been really well signposted, and although you can hear the traffic in the distance, it's been all off-road on a well-maintained wide cycle path, and it just follows the bay all the way around, which is basically what I'm continuing to do now. Lots of cyclists, most of them day trippers. I've just passed through a place just when I crossed the Canal de la Somme, lots of people hiring bikes, and I've just passed my first touring cyclist, French chap. I did pause to have a quick word with him, but he clearly didn't want to engage in conversation. Takes all sorts, I suppose. And Le Ourdel, which is right on the tip, the point of where the bay curves around, sending me against the wind again in a north westerly direction, and then I'm about to turn round and head in a south westerly direction with the wind behind me. But it's a beautiful spot, a wide bay, wide flat bay. There's a lighthouse of sorts. I'm pausing because from a distance it certainly looked like a lighthouse, and it does when you're standing next to it, but it's kind of a lighthouse without the top bit. The top bit is just a green bit of metal, probably with a light in it. Very popular with cyclists still, and people wandering around the bay. It's one of those great places where you can stop and stare. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Je cherche quelque chose à manger.
Peut-être vous allez trouver.
Café boisson. Fraîche produit région.
Ouais, c'est beaucoup de produits de région qu'on fait plutôt.
Ok. Vous faites quelque chose, vous avez quelque chose que je peux manger
À part des gâteaux, on n'a rien d'autre, ça fait plus de frais.
Ah, ok. Not a great choice in there, but I got myself a packet of Jaffa Cakes and a drink of cola. Make a change from the water. Finally, after nearly 500 kilometres of cycling, I've just come across a hill. It's between the Baie de Somme and Dieppe, and I kind of suspected it might be coming because when you looked south from the Baie de Somme, you could see very clearly in the distance lots of cliffs, white cliffs snaking off into the distance. And well, I haven't climbed that high, it's only been a few minutes, but yeah, after the flatlands between Rotterdam and yesterday, perhaps it's a sign of things to come. Saturday the 9th, 7:30 a.m. in a very misty Dieppe. I'm standing or walking beside Dieppe Harbour, and yeah, a fair few people around already. I suppose that's the nature of a busy port, but it's very misty, but the sun is breaking through. I think it's going to be a very, very nice hot day again. Talking of hot days, yesterday, well, not a cloud in the sky. Dread to think what the temperatures were, but with plenty of factor 50 sun protection cream and well hydrated, well fed. Had a fantastic cycle from, well, where I started yesterday, and I can't even remember where I started yesterday. Somewhere to the north of Le Crotoy, wasn't it? I made it all the way down. It was 93 or 96 kilometres in the end, so a pretty substantial ride all the way down here to Dieppe. Now, got a few things on the agenda for today. I'm not cycling today. Booked myself into the Ibis budget hotel, which isn't that budget, but there we go. At least it's comfortable and get a decent night's sleep. Charge everything, do a little bit of research regarding the Avenue Verte to Paris. That's one of the missions I've got today. Wouldn't mind doing a guided tour of Dieppe as well. I usually do that when I arrive in places like this. So I'm going to head to the tourist office, although at 7:30 in the morning they're unlikely to be open, but I don't know, they might have a poster in the window or something. Have a general wander round and enjoy not cycling for 24 hours. Now, I love cycling in the morning, but I especially love cycling on a Sunday morning because it's just really nice and extra quiet. I almost feel guilty recording this and making sounds. Beautiful, beautiful morning. Bonjour. Just me, a handful of cyclists out, and a few people in the allotment that I just passed a few moments ago. Now, I've started and I've found the Avenue Verte, the green avenue that actually starts in London and goes all the way to Paris. And for the first day, for today, I think basically, well, I've got a map from the tourist office yesterday in Dieppe, and the route basically heads in a very straight line in the direction of the southeast, which is the direction of Paris, of course. And it follows, as far as I'm aware, follows a disused railway track. In fact, they haven't actually removed the railway. It's still there, but it does look a bit rusty. So I would imagine it is indeed disused, or very little used. And just out of Dieppe, the path, which is a tarmac path, is running beside the railway. We're just separated by a green metal fence. I'm not sure how long that will continue. My plan for today is to get to a place called Forges-les-Eaux, where there's a campsite. It's not going to be a very long day, 55-ish kilometres I think. And the only wind that I've got this morning is the wind generated by my movement, which is a nice change from the winds that I was having to deal with when I was cycling along the coast to Dieppe last week. I've just paused 17 kilometres from Dieppe and 18 kilometres to Neufchâtel-en-Bray, which isn't my destination, but it is the place where I'll stop and perhaps have some breakfast, or it'll be a late breakfast. But anyway, I have to say, this is not just impressive, this is uber impressive. What they've done here with this greenway, certainly the stretch so far, is by far the best I've ever seen. It is a masterclass in how to transform a disused railway line into a greenway for walking and cycling. It's amazing. The infrastructure, absolutely fantastic. The surface has been brilliant since leaving Dieppe, tarmac surface. The signage, well, ironically the signage, because basically you're just going in one straight line, is actually not really necessary. It's fairly obvious where you're going. But in terms of the distances, for example, in front of me I've got a sign. It's got Neufchâtel-en-Bray 18, Ricardville-du-Val 3.5, Saint-Vaast-d'Equiville 1.5 kilometres. It also tells me at the top how many kilometres presumably to Paris, 151 kilometres. And each of the intersections, because there are lots of roads that cross the path, there's just loads and loads of bits and pieces that you can read and tell you about walks and rides that either go off on the left or on the right of where you're happening to have stopped and be. It's just brilliant. Now, admittedly, it helps that it's in a beautiful part of the world. This is Basse Normandie, and as I look out on either sides of the greenway, just rolling hills, gently sloping into the distance, farmyards, farms, little houses beautifully kept. I've passed numerous picture-perfect villages with churches, beautiful houses. There are crops waiting to be harvested later in the summer. It really is perfect, and the only thing I'm afraid of is that perhaps it might get a little bit worse as I go near Paris, because this is a very, very high standard. I'm just hoping that it maintains this kind of quality all the way. I'll keep you updated. 7 kilometres from Neufchâtel-en-Bray, and I've paused again just because something caught my eye. There was a sign and it says bivouac autorisé de 19h à 8h. So basically you can camp here from 7 p.m. until 8 a.m. in the morning. There's a little patch of ground, there's a hut, and I think there probably is a toilet in that hut. There's a picnic bench, nice little spot to camp overnight. I wonder if this is an exception, or I wonder if there are any more of these. It would be good to know. Doesn't appear on the map, however. I'll keep an eye out.
Une personne, un vélo, une tente.
Ouais, c'est ça.
Et pas d'électricité?
Non, non, pas d'électricité.
Ouais, impeccable. Ça vous fait 10,70 €, s'il vous plaît.
Je peux payer avec la carte
Oui.
ou, ouais. Vous avez beaucoup de cyclistes qui arrivent
Oui, oui.
Ouais.
Hier soir, j'avais un petit peu de monde, oui.
Ouais, ok.
Voilà.
Merci.
Votre ticket. Alors, l'emplacement 82.
Ok.
Les toilettes, douche, tout est ici, sur le bloc. Là,
Ok.
vous avez la porte qui est ouverte, marqué le mot douche.
Ok. That was me checking in at Compine la Minière, I think it's called. Yeah, Compine la Minière at a place called Forges-les-Eaux. Quite a smart little town, built on a hill, and just been back into the little town just to buy some bread and something to drink. And yeah, quite a smart little town. It amazes me that even the most inconsequential, out-of-the-way places in France are just so well maintained compared to, well, say the equivalent ones back in Britain. Anyway, the campsite is quite a large campsite by the looks of it. I've only seen one corner of it, but mercifully, although the pitch is in the sunshine and it's still very, very hot and sunny, there's a nice bench in a little shaded area in the middle of an area encircled by pictures. I'm the only one here yet, although the chap did say at reception that he did have a few cyclists in last night, so you never know, somebody might turn up today. Right, well, it's only 4 o'clock, which is nice. I normally have to rush around in the evenings doing things, so I'm just going to take my time and have a nice evening of doing, well, as little as possible and relaxing as much as possible. It's Monday and it's a return really to the hard, enjoyable grind of cycling in France. Yesterday along the Greenway, along the Voie Verte, the Avenue Verte from Dieppe down to where I was staying yesterday, and I've forgotten the name of the place, something Les Bains, was a pretty easy ride. It was on the flat. Okay, you had to keep cycling all the time, but you know, in the sun, very, very easy riding. A bit more standard today in terms of the actual riding, up, down, round the houses to a certain extent. I've got to think about the route finding. I'm using the signs, yes, and the signage still is very, very good. I've also got into the habit, and I've done this on previous trips, got into the habit of using OpenStreetMap. It's pretty basic. All it is a user-generated map with lots of cycle routes on it. It's not 100% accurate. There have been a few times when the signs have said something different to what OpenStreetMap said, but actually it's really easy to use. It doesn't drain the battery, I don't think. It doesn't follow you. There's no GPS tracking, although it does show you where you are. But it doesn't tell you to turn left, turn right. You just follow the line, and it's very easy to use and very. I think it's, well, certainly the best thing that I've ever used in terms of making sure I know where I'm going. Now, after Gournay-en-Bray today, heading south, obviously still in the direction of Paris, but the route does split into two. One route goes to Beauvais and then kind of loops around in a reverse C back into Paris, and the other is a little bit more direct, and that goes to Gisors and then heads into Paris more from the north and the west, and that's the one that I'm taking. That's the one that they talk about in the Cicerone guide. I don't think they mention the other one, so whether it's a new one I'm not sure. I did think that perhaps after Gournay-en-Bray, say it properly, the signs would peter out, they would stop, but they haven't. They're older signs, which makes me wonder whether this is the original one and the other route to Beauvais is a new route that they've developed, perhaps because, well, it might have better routes or whatever. Certainly the map I'm looking at, there's a green route going from Gournay to Beauvais and beyond, which would indicate that it's off-road, whereas I'm nominally on a road, although it's very, very quiet, where I am now. Shortly after Gournay, got to a road in a town, a place called Neuf-Marché, and it said route barrée à 5 km, and that was the route of the Avenue Verte. So what do you do in those circumstances? You can plod on and assume that a bike is going to get past, but with it being such a hot day, I didn't really have the energy to cycle 5 kilometres and have to turn round. So I thought, well, there is a parallel road on the other side of the railway track, a real railway track this time, one that's actually used, although I haven't seen any trains in it today, but it is fully functioning. There's a road on the other side of that, and so I followed that for the last 5, 6, 7 kilometres. It was actually quite useful because it passed the supermarket, and I was desperate for water and also for something to eat, so I bought some nuts in there. So now I feel a bit more energetic on the bike. I've rejoined the Greenway, I've rejoined the Voie Verte, the Avenue Verte, by cutting across the railway again. And I'm just hoping that if the route was indeed blocked, it was blocked before where I am now. It will be frustrating if it isn't. Right, well, next stop Gisors, and then hopefully the Campi Municipal just outside a place called Dangu. It's 10 p.m. and I'm in the tent and I'm horizontal. I've never recorded anything for the podcast before while I'm horizontal, and I've only kept the inner layer of the tent on, so I'm exposed to the elements should the elements decide to throw themselves at me. But having checked the weather forecast, it says there is, well, somewhere between a 0% and 1% chance of rain tonight. So I'm just hoping that it's one of the 99 times out of 100 when it's not going to rain on this particular evening. It's been very hot all day, so I'm assuming it doesn't. It is a bizarre experience though, looking out of your tent. It's a bit like sitting in your conservatory if you've got one, out of the roof, out of the glass roof, looking at the trees. Obviously here I can hear the animals, the birds, the owls, and also, I mean, it is an idyllic location. It's the municipal campsite in a place called Dangu, I think I've got that right, D-A-N-G-U, Dangu, in Normandy. But there is a noise in the background, and having looked on the satellite image on Google Earth, I think there's a quarry somewhere nearby, and that is the background noise, although the noise is not coming from the direction where the quarry should be. I presume that's down to crazy echoes around the valley. But apart from that, what's not to like? This is just perfect. Good weather, well fed, well watered, tired, with the prospect of cycling to one of the greatest cities in Europe tomorrow, Paris. Okay, merci, monsieur. Thank you for your stories.
Yeah, have a nice trip.
What's your name?
Renier. My
Renier.
family name,
Yeah?
we were on the same side of Wellington. Pozzo di Bonco,
Okay.
Corsican against Napoleon.
Ah. So your origins are Corsican?
Yeah.
Hence the chateau in Corsica.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, okay. Right. I'll look out for you next time I'm here, and I'll come and park
Knock
my
at the
tent on your
Do,
lawn.
très soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, merci. Merci, monsieur. Au revoir. That was a really nice way to start the day, with chatting to that chap you've just heard. He introduced himself in the bar where I went to buy my coffee. I'd just bumped into him in the boulangerie, and he asked me where I was from, and I said Angleterre. And then he started talking to me in English. He said there are two connections between Dangu, which is the town where I stayed last night, and England. He told me that first of all, there was a famous horse called Gladiateur, and the bar was named after Gladiateur. It was called Le Gladiateur, and it was the first horse in the mid-19th century to win all the great races of England, the Derby, the 2000 Guineas, and a couple of others, and there was a picture on the wall to prove it. And he also told me that his grandfather, Montgomery, turned up. Apparently his grandfather lived his family lived in the local chateau, and Montgomery turned up in the war and asked to use his fields to accommodate his soldiers, and his grandfather turned round and told him that they weren't fields, they were lawns. So that's a nice little way to start the day. He also told me a little bit about his family history, about the fact that he seems to have had a rather eccentric ancestor who took the stones from the Tuileries Gardens, or the chateau at the Tuileries, presumably in Paris, when it burnt down, and rebuilt a chateau in Corsica, and that's where his family are originally from. He wasn't really able to tell me where the name Dangu came from. He did come up with a theory, perhaps regarding dampness and a bridge over the river, and he made perhaps a connection with it being the first place that you get to, or a frontier town between what was many centuries ago Normandy and France. Right. Talking of the Tuileries Gardens, might see that later, because my destination is Paris. Now you might think, hearing those birds tweet, it was the Tuileries Gardens. It isn't the Tuileries Gardens. It is the more concrete covered garden outside the Les Halles in the centre of Paris, big shopping centre. Obviously I've arrived in Paris, and yesterday was a long day in the heat. Whoa, but it was a good ride. Very varied ride. Started off on a greenway, the greenway that I'd taken the previous day. At the end of the day, continued along that was wonderful. It was nice and shaded as you cycled under the trees. And then gradually it came out into open countryside. You got hints of Paris because of the planes flying overhead. And a lot of the track actually, although it was off-road, it wasn't on paved roads, so it was actually on quite rough tracks. And I did think that if you were thinking of cycling the Avenue Verte on a road bike with very thin tyres, you might struggle on those sections. I wasn't too bad for me because I was on quite wide Marathon Plus Tour tyres. And then I hit, I think the first bit of the outskirts of Paris was a place called Clergy-les-Eaux, which is a big modern development with a new train station, and I thought, this is the outskirts of Paris. And then it kind of slowed down a bit. Left, right. Went through the forest, which is in Maison Lafitte. Quite a dense forest, to say that you're basically within a few kilometres of the centre of Paris. We're not talking Hyde Park here, we're talking proper forest. You'd get easily lost in there. Came out of that, and then it was a case of following, well, the river, the canal, a lot of towpath. I did cut across one of the loops that, because the cycle route, the Avenue Verte, follows the course of the Seine for a lot of the route in the final bit, but I did cut across one of the loops just to save myself a bit of time, because I'd promised to be in Paris by 6 p.m. to meet my warm showers host. I eventually lost track of the signage and managed to make my way down to Notre Dame, which is the finish of the route, and I got there it was about 20 to 6 last night, so pretty good timing. And then headed off into nearby Marais, which is it's the area of Paris which is similar to Soho, very cosmopolitan. And I met up with Mizu, he's called. Now, if you read Mizu's profile on Warm Showers, you might think, oh, this is going to be hard work. He is the most gentle, lovely person, and he's a perfect host. He took me on a little tour of the Marais last night, pointing out a few features. He's lived there for 30 years, and it was a really nice evening. I then went off and found something to eat, a gourmet meal consisting of various bits and pieces I could find in a local supermarket, and I ate them as I wandered, and a couple of beers in a bar. Now, this is the point at which this episode of the podcast is going to finish. I've arrived in Paris, so I've come all the way down from Rotterdam into Belgium, into France, followed the EuroVelo 4, the first part of the Vélo Maritime, and then at Dieppe turned left and headed down on the Avenue Verte. So my second bit of the trip is now complete. The plan for the next bit, and you'll hear this in the next episode, I need to check my numbers, I'm not going to commit myself to a number, whichever one it is, 50 something, is to get to Mont Saint-Michel. Now, later today, after I've done a little bit of shopping here in central Paris, I'm going to head off down to Montparnasse. I'm going to catch my second train down to Chartres. I don't really fancy another day fighting the traffic and fighting the suburbs of a big city. So I'm going to take the train to Chartres. There's a campsite near the centre, stay there overnight, and then start making my way along the Vélo Seine to Mont Saint-Michel. And I would imagine it's at Mont Saint-Michel where I'll publish the next podcast. So thank you for listening. If you want to get in touch, you can do. All the contact details are at cyclingeurope.org/contact. And if you'd like to support the website or the podcast or whatever, then please consider doing so. And you can do that by going to cyclingeurope.org/support. So, from Paris, from this episode of the Cycling Europe podcast, the music, again, was kindly supplied by the one and only Rob Ainsley. I shall see you in the next episode when, hopefully, I will have arrived in Mont Saint-Michel.